Yes. So we want to start by creating web service application. But for every service you want to create, each service we call it an endpoint. So a combination of the whole service is what we call API. I explained to you yesterday that API means what? Application programmable. So this API consists of set of service that we can use to serve a particular subscriber. Subscriber means anybody that want to use your service. Let's say you already have a function or a method. Majorly you create a method. You create a method, you now give each method address. That's what we call endpoint. You understand? So when you create a method, you give each method address and what we call endpoint. But when you are working with a web service, there are four methods that we normally use. The first method is we have a get. The second method we have a post. The third method we have a put. The fourth method we have a delete. We have option too, but majorly we make use of get, post and what? Delete. That is where anytime you want to retrieve resource from the server, we normally use get. Let's say any statement that has to do with select. Maybe you write a query that selects something from the database. We normally use what? Get. But you can equally use post, but as a convention, you use get. Anytime you want to save, you want to create a new object into the database, you use what? Post. Let's say I user want to register. So the method I will annotate it to be what? A post method. But if I want to log in, I can equally annotate it as what? A post method. But if I want to check the details of a user, let's say I put in the matric number of a student, I can make it to be a get method. Anytime I want to modify, I want to update an object, or I want to update, let's say when I did a registration, there are missing information that I supposed to edit. So when you edit it and when you want to save it back, you make sure that you annotate the method to what? Put. So when you don't need the resource again and you think that okay, you don't need the account again, you want to delete, you use what? Delete. You know, like even on my WhatsApp, you may decide to delete your account that don't want to be the WhatsApp. But mostly in financial institution, you don't delete a record. And when you delete a record, you should try and make a backup of what you delete in another repository. So those are the kind of method, those are the four major type of method we have, which you will see how to use them. But when you want to create, majorly every method of a web service always be a uh, they are mostly a method with a return type. You understand? And you specify the return type of the what method. But when you want to write a service, take for example, let's say I have a login service. This one will authenticate user. So what you need to consider is you need to consider the payload. You need to ask yourself, yes, like yesterday I explained payload. Payload, you need to consider, the first thing you need to consider is what? Payload. When you talk about payload is what are the required parameter for you to log in. That's what we call payload. So like now, they say mostly when you want to log into most of this application, you can use username and what? And password. So this is your payload. And the second thing is we want to create a method that will authenticate user. The second thing you need to consider is okay, what validation do you need to do? You ask yourself, every method, always take note of this. There are methods that doesn't need validation. There are methods that, but you need to ask yourself, validations. What validation do you need to perform on this method? The second thing is, for every failed validation, what did you want to return? Then four, you need to ask yourself, for success login, what payload did you want to return? So maybe if I log in, you may decide to return my username, my full name, my email address, my contact address. So it means that we have to create a class for that. It's possible that your tables in the database has lot of fields, but a situation whereby you want to extract certain fields from a table, we use what we call mapper. We are going to get to that. But right now, this is what you need to know. And the fifth one is you catch error. How do you intend to catch error? That is, if an error occurs during the process, what do you want to do? Do you want to return a message? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? Do we understand this? So, and when you want to do, let's say I want to do registration, you are still going to follow this payload approach. What are the payload? What payload do you need? Always follow this payload do you need. So most of the times you work based on the payload you have defined in your database. Because most of the time before you write your web, you must have created your database, create tables in the database, define the payload, the tables column. Based on the tables column, there are some columns that are required for you to do the registration. You understand? So this is where we are. Anytime you are creating a method, always know that you ask yourself, is there a payload? Validation. What are the, is there any field that if this field is not supplied, I will raise an error? So take for example that if email is not supplied, you will raise an error, or if email is not valid, you will raise an error. That means you won't allow the user to proceed. You will return appropriate what? Message. So that is what web service. We are going to start by, I will introduce you to a Spring framework called Spring Boot. One of the Spring framework is what? Spring Boot. In the Spring Boot, you will see what we will add to the project. We will create a fresh Spring Boot project. We will add Spring, we will add MySQL and we will connect it. Maybe if we can't connect today, we can connect tomorrow. But we need internet. Let me get something. I have to pause this video. Now let's proceed. We are going to create one application. But what we want to do is we want to bootstrap it, so we don't need to create the application afresh. There are two things you need to download. When you create your web service, you need to test it if the web service is actually working fine. You get the gist. So in that case, you need a test tool for your web service. One of the test tools is the Swagger. So you can integrate Swagger with your application. Another test tool is Postman. We are going to download Postman now. Postman. So let's download Postman for our window. '64, right?
Yes.
Which? Okay, this one is paused.
Can you window that?
So another thing is this. What you're doing is this. You go to I will not come back. This one, that Shina is not here. Spring dot what? I will go to quick start. So it's supposed to be start.spring.io. Start.spring.io. So we want to create a project, and as I told you the other time that most projects we are going to create is going to be, we are going to use Maven project. You can use Gradle, and you can select the language if you know how to use Kotlin, if you know how to use Go. But now we are using what? Java. So we are using this 2.4.3. That's another stable version. You can use 2.3. But this one is fine. This is stable. This one you can use this one, but this is the recommended version. So the package, your package name. What do you want to give your package name? Let's say well, we want to build a web service for GTV. Let me say GTV. Let's say okay, gtbank.com. Let me call it. Let's call the name of app. Let's call it SSO. Get it? So you can give description to your app. Uh, a demo Spring Boot demo project. I think that is fine. You may decide if it is jar or what. The difference between this one is we run this one as a standalone while we deploy this one to web server. We are coming to that. I'm still going to show you web servers. That's why I say Shina, there is no way you can explain this. So web servers enable us to distribute the app over the internet so that whatever web server you use to build your app locally, it is the same web server you will request from your ISP. So your ISP will can install the same web server for you online so that you put your application and it start what running. So you choose the type of Java you have. I think you have a Java 8 on your system now. The Java 11 is the recommended, but notwithstanding is fine. You now begin to choose what? Dependency. You get it? Choose dependencies. Loanbook is fine. Loanbook is one of the dependencies that is very good. You know, you used to have set and get. But if you use this loanbook, you annotate your class or your this thing with at data. You don't need to put set and get. You have access to set and get. We have this one, right? Another developer is Spring Boot DevTools. This Spring Boot DevTools enable you to, when you modify your code, it will automatically restart because you are working with a server. When you modify your code, it will automatically compile it. But in your desktop application, you normally build, clean and build. But this one, it automatically compile it and make it available for test. Spring Web enable you to work with a web service so that you'll be able to write your RESTful web service. So that you'll be able to make use of the four method of the web service like get, post, and this. We can search for it. You see, they have a lot of dependencies. Jessie framework, we are not using Jessie framework. Teamlink, we are not using this. Spring Boot, or these are security. Okta, these are security. They are very, very good. Spring Data JPA, we want to use this. You understand? Spring Data JPA. You can say Spring Data. Can you say Spring Data SQL? You may decide to use this one. Persist data and SQL server with plain JDBC using Spring Data. No, Spring Data JPA. We are using Spring Data JPA. Another thing is you add dependency for MySQL. When you're working with desktop application, you add MySQL library where you choose, you right click, you add library, you add MySQL. You forgot it. When you are working with your desktop application, where is your netbook? When you are working with your desktop application, you right click and you add MySQL. So another thing you need to add is This one is equally good. We normally use this configuration processor is very good, most especially when you want to work with multi-tenant, but we are coming to that. So MySQL, you add MySQL what? Driver. So how many library have we added now? Ordinarily, in your own case, you go and be downloading this library online. But these are just the dependency you add. So there is another this thing we need to add. We need to add a Jackson. But I think that has covered it already. We can have a REST repository. So when we are through with adding library, remember we choose that is a Maven project. This the language you want to use for coding is this. This one we have this. We choose Java 8. If you like, later you may decide to change this. You get it. You have all this in place. You may now decide to what? Generate your project. So it will download the SSO project. You will get it. So this project now you may decide to now open it. If you want to extract the project here, you should see this SSO. It's a complete project that you now bring into your application and begin to write. So when you bring it, let me cut it and put it on where. So let me create another directory and call it display. Like so come you that you've done this thing before, so you have more understanding of how everything comes together. This is what I'm saying. That all this your this thing, when you are working with MySQL, you come here,
We had library.
you had library, you had MySQL library. Those are the library we had. But the problem with this one is if you build this app now, you have if you want to send this app to somebody now,
Person has to download.
you have to download this. But that person will have to download the library one after the other, or you package it and it make it heavy. Especially if you want to deploy your application, you want to put it to Bitbucket or Jira or Git. So it makes the code more heavy. So if you are I'm not comfortable with all this code, you can open them when you want. The implication of this is you can see some of the projects. Later you go to open project or you can go to the directory. When you are working and you have numerous projects open, you don't know when you will be editing another project. So all you need to do now is you can open a project. This is a project that we clone. Can you see that it's showing that it's a what? Maven. So the Maven project, if the Maven project open, it will not download the dependency. But for the first time you download the dependency. For subsequent use, you don't need to download the what? Dependencies. I'm not going to go through much details of adding database. Tomorrow we work on database. It's my phone. So one of the we've downloaded this guy, Postman. Let's install Postman. Hey, you can just charge it for me. You can charge it because it's there. So another thing we need to set up as part of it, we need to set up a Maven locally. You get it? So if you download Maven and you can give it to them, like Postman, you can give it to them because most of these files are heavy. So with download Maven, you set up a Maven so that you work as a full developer. Maven download. You see how we download Maven, we set it up. Mostly this version is stable. You have to create an account with your Gmail. That's fine. What do you want? Can I see now? You don't even look at it. When immediately your login is successful, you send a request to this guy. This is separate. This is one of the web services I'm talking about. And this one show that you are what? You are signing through this app. This is a web service. Two of them communicate. They talk. Don't need to create a team. Just have a workspace. But you don't even need to create a team here. So the Maven we are trying to download, and I have Maven and that. All this window, I don't. That's why I don't. The window is not that complicated. It is this one. Maybe we have to pause the video so that we download the Maven there. So the next thing is you do is you go to the folder where your Maven is. You can extract it here, but the file is actually big. Why this Maven is the size is small? Let me see. Are you sure this is the Maven? Because the Maven I have is heavy. Maybe we have modified it. I don't know. It's possible. Normally I used to put it to my C drive. You can put it anywhere. So yes, you now need to configure it. You see now, I copy the location of this Maven. You understand? If you open your CMD now, you say MVN version. You see, it doesn't understand what MVN is all about. You get it? So let's close it. Let's go to environment. So in the environment, this is where you configure your Maven. You go to this system part. You paste. You know, in the Maven folder, there is a bin part there. That is what we're supposed to put here. You get it? You click OK. You click OK. Now let me start CMD again. Let me say MVA version. Can you see it? It's telling me that Java home environment is not defined correctly. So what you need to do is you go back to your where you install Java. You understand? So you need to set JDK home. This is necessary whenever you get any new system. Java home, you put JDK 11 instead of this. I think it was that time when we set it. You get it? We have set Java home here. I don't think it will tell us, but what you need to do is you need to restart this guy again. Most of the time, it's not all about code. If you are unable to set your environment properly, you will have problem even compiling the code. Can you see now? If you run the version of the Java, you have this. Can you see it? So all you need to do is, where is this project that we added? It's in the netbin here. You understand? All I have to do is I want to download all the library. So I can just cd to change directory to that folder. Cd means you change directory so that you be in the current project directory. I can say mvn clean so that it will clean the project and it will download the dependency for me. Because downloading the dependency from NetBeans is really taking time, and if it downloads, NetBeans will change status so that I can start working, I can open the project normally. The project, this one has one error. Unknown host repo.maven. Okay, when you see unknown host, it means that the network is bad. Because if you look at this project, look at the project now, to the left hand side here, you have your all those library you choose that time, you see them here. Can you see them? All the library you choose. You choose MySQL, you choose Lombok, you choose Spring Boot. This one will be added to you automatically. You choose the dev tools, you choose web, you choose Spring Data JPA. So the project is fine, and this is the versions of the Spring Boot you choose, which is when you come to your Spring IO here, you choose this version. So if you don't like that, you may decide to change it to another version. But this will work. Can you see now? It's good. It happened the other time because the network was back. So as long as this one will download and immediately it's downloaded, if you create another project again, and if the project use the same versions of Spring Boot, it will not re-download it again. Let's wait for it. Let's pause the videos while it finishes. We now have this project. When you come here, yes, I've resumed it. When you come here, this man is supposed to do his own. But because the dependency has been downloaded already, this one will be faster. Uh, See this one. Don't mind this guy. It has, and this is the entry point of the application. You understand? This is where the program execution, your own used to have public static void main, but you can see that it is annotated with at Spring Boot application. Don't be surprised, most of the time you see at something, that is the annotation. So we are making use of Spring Boot. This one supposed to go. This is, you will see if you come under resource, you see application.properties here. This is where your database configuration will be. But nothing is there right now, but it's not no cause for alarm. But what I normally do is you need to create a project structure. You understand? When you create a project structure, from here, you can have a model here. I have explained this to you the other time, even when you are working. Here, you can have a controller here. You may decide to have another, we call it utilities. You may decide to have another, we call it, you may call it DTO if you like. Data access, data transfer object. You understand? You may decide to call it DTO. But I'm just telling you this project structure. So you may create another one and call it repo. This is where your repository will be. Repository will be the one to connect to database. You remember the other time when you used to have repo, you create repo separately in your desktop application. Have you forgotten? Or is it service? Service, yes. In service, I can help. So here it is very easy here. So the same way you generate entity classes as database there, you can equally generate here so that you have all your entity as model. But here, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to create a class and call it login what? Login controller. So on my login controller, I will annotate it at rest controller at request mapping. At request mapping, I can say authentication. So I will press Ctrl Shift I. Ctrl Shift I. So that it will be supposed to import this. I think we are still having issue with let me do nvm clean install. So clean install will download any other dependency. I think there is one other dependency that's supposed to be downloaded. Because ordinary loader name is not supposed to give us this yellow color. Tomorrow you will see how we will now add a database. I will give you a task today so that you go and create a database, create table so that you come with tables tomorrow. Then we generate entity, we create a web service for the table. Let's wait for it to finish. Download them separately. So we can now press Ctrl Shift I so that we import whatever we want to import. Can you see? We have imported it. This is a base endpoint for this particular class. So here you can have as many methods as what possible. Let's say we want to have a first method called login. You understand? So the first thing you do is I can say public. My return type can be maybe string. So what I want to take, let me first tell you of example of get request. But always put a return type. There is what we call response entity. I will show you. Let's say we just want to return Control Shift I so that you import this. Now say return response. Inside this OK, you now put what you want to put. Let's say okay, welcome to web service program. You understand? You now need to define two things here. What is the address you want to give? That's okay. But what is the method at get we want to use get request? Because here we are not using anything. We are not saving anything. We want to use get request. Get mapping. The address, the location of this method, you don't get it. You get it now. I explained to you that whenever you want to work, you need to ask yourself payload, validation, this, and as part of it, you should ask yourself the method you want to use. And you should ask of the name you want to, the endpoint name. Do you get it? Endpoint what? Name. Endpoint name is the name that we can use to identify your method. You can have as many methods as possible within this login, but each method you annotate them, you give them address. So this method now I'm exposing it so that anybody that have access to my API can consume it. Do you get it? You don't get it?
No, sir.
I'm telling you now that in a web service, this is a web service. We just created a single class. We call it what? Login control. And in this class, you can have different methods that will serve different functions. Each method you give it a method. Each method you annotate it that this type of method is a get request. This is the address of the method. You can annotate some to be a post request. You put the address of the method. You can annotate some to be what? Put request. You put the address of the method. Okay. So let's say, let me run this. If you want to run the project, let's say MVN Spring Boot run. Let's try and run it so that you see it. It's not supposed to be downloading again now. Why are you still downloading? Okay, after this, I don't think it will download again. But it will not take time. It will be faster. That is window. If I have this on Mac, yesterday I do the first download. It will not download again. It will just so while that is running, what I'm saying is this. Take for example, assuming that when you deploy this app to GTB, HTTPS, gtbank.com, you now have authentication, you now have message. That is the meaning of this. So if I have another one, I have another method I can call it get. I can say okay, greeting. I just say okay, welcome to software. So if I want to access this method, I want to get this content maybe from another programming environment or from another environment. So this is how I'm going to get it. It's going to be this address. Greeting. Remember, this is the base. Do you get it? Well, what I'm telling you now, that this is a what? A get request. This is another get request. This one should be done.
ID. Group.
Oh,
Class.
because we added MySQL, you understand? It's asking us that we should configure data source, and I don't want to configure the data source. So in this case, let me remove JPA and MySQL dependency. So tomorrow we add them. Do we get the gist now? Or we don't get it?
Get. Get.
We should allow this guy even on public network. So this is even when you cancel it, Control C. So yes. So if you run it again, npm spring boot, do you get it? Now, if I want to access my this now, it's a get request. You see, every request you type directly to web browser is a get request. If I type something like this and I search Google, it's a get request. Once you see that Google construct it, search queue is equal to welcome. Google will now search this. Do you get it? You don't get it. All this thing is a web service. So let's say now your local host, if you are working on your local, you now say local host, that is the name of your address. The port on which this application is running is 88. If you look at it, I bet we can change the port later. Every web application run on a port. It is the port number that we can use to identify a resource like Gmail and Google. When you say google.com, it run on a port, but the port is hidden. You get it? It run on a port 80. Anything that run on a port 80, you don't need to put the port number, just access it directly. I don't do we get it? See, when you say https google.com.ng, this one is equally running on the port. So instead of using https, I'm running on my local host. That's why I will replace this one with what? Local host. But this one is running on a port. A port number identifies resources on the server. This one that everybody is squeezing face as if something strange. 8080. So what is your address? Authentic what? You get it? What does it bring? This is a web service. You don't get it. What is there again? What we are doing in WhatsApp? Look at this message. This is okay. Now let me give you another instance. Let me give you another instance. Let's create an object here. Let's call it. Don't worry. Let's call it users. Let me call it student. I think you're familiar with student, right? Let's say string what? Full name, string email, phone, string department. But you know we added loan book. You can say add data so that you won't have to say set and get again. Let's say I have a method that anytime you call it, it will give you the list of the students. Let me tell you, a web service is a service that you create that anybody can decide to build any user interface and work with it. Let me tell you now, if I have access to all the service of a Paystack, I mean of a Skype or of a WhatsApp, if I have access to them, I may decide to create another application, design my interface. Anytime I want to log in, if you send me your log, I will just send it to the service of WhatsApp, and I will register you. You will think you are on WhatsApp. Essence of web service is to create a service that you can use across platform. How do I explain again? Okay. You use JavaFX interface. I can create a web service that you don't need to create a database from your own side. You don't need to create database. Hafiz doesn't need to create database. Lane doesn't need to create database. If you want to create user, send the user details to my service. It will create it for you. And if you want to fetch user, my service will return the user details to you. You can just display it within your widget. You don't still understand that? Let me create a service that return the list of users. Let me say student list, right? Let me say get student list. So let me say okay, list. This is student, right? It's equal to new what? I want to import student. I want to import this. I want to import what? So instead of greeting here, I can import the list. So let me add some students. New what? Set what? Department. Abi? Email. Yes, now. You don't understand. I remember one of this guy that came to learn program when I was in Funab. He said that he was reading that as from today, anywhere you see any developer, you will frustrate that Kabiyesi. He was lamenting that it was not easy. So now I will now add it what? Right? Right? I can create another student. I say ST is equal to new what? You are familiar with this. That is why you need to read when you are coming for programming class so that you will be able to understand it. Don't worry, just learn what you want to learn within the next 2 months. Assimilate so that you start working. I still add it to the list. I return the list. You understand? See, as I'm working, as I save it, it will reload the stuff. You understand? So assuming now that you are working on desktop application now, say you want to fetch the list of the student, but normally you used to communicate to your database. See, the essence of web service is we can create a single application, single service that have a single database and different people can keep submitting data. You design your interface with Bootstrap, you design your interface with Java Effects, you design your interface with another let's say Angular. So your data is coming from the same service. How did you think that GTB have access to your BVN? First Bank have access to the same BVN. If you go to UBA, the same BVN. It's web service because we have a web service that has been created already. That anytime you send a BVN to verify that this BVN really exists. That is a web service. There are two different way of creating application. Is either you create application, you connect it to database directly, or you create a web service separately, then create another application separately that communicate to the web service. I don't know if you get it. Okay. So if I want to access this, it's going to be this, right? Instead of message, it's going to be this, right? You see what it will return. Can you see that it return a JSON? This is the JSON I talked to you yesterday. If I now ask you to transform this JSON into a class, can you see it? Into Java class, because we did this yesterday. You notice that this is an object. This is the first object. It ends here. This is an object, another object. It is in an array. The list you pass to it is this. So each object will give it this. Do you people understand it? You don't understand. We are just didn't get the question. We're not trying to do post. We're not trying to. Let me not do. Should we stop here or we should continue?
Let's stop here.